It's really seemed like since the launch of Lightfall, we've been on a consistent downhill trend in terms of the community's feedback when it comes to Destiny 2. I'm going to try to lay out my thoughts on how I'm feeling. If you agree or disagree with me, please let me know. My channel is typically not like a negative channel. I usually just do guides and it's like, hey, here's how you do this content. There's usually no reason for me to get negative in the content I make. So this opinion piece is not standard for me here. I do want to make sure that I'm just not complaining the entire video. So there will be some good points in here. I do think Destiny does a lot of stuff well. I'll also try to provide constructive feedback where I can if I do have a solution. But yeah, let's get right into it. Right now, Destiny 2 on paper seems like it would be a fantastic game. We've got 7 raids, 7 dungeons, exotic missions, Iron Banner, Nightfalls, Grandmasters, like there's a million things that we can do in this game. Very in-depth subclasses to customize and unlock, quality of life changes like loadouts. Mods are now available to everybody, so you can create the same builds as all the content creators without having to wait for Ada to have the right mod on the right day. So we do have a lot of good in the game. I want to make sure I get that out before I start complaining, I guess you could say. All of these things make Destiny great, but they aren't the only thing that Destiny needs. I think the word that comes to my mind when I think of Destiny right now is just stagnation. So many of the game's core systems really have not been innovated on in quite some time now. We know exactly what to expect in terms of what types of content we'll be getting before the next season, before the next expansion. We can pretty much predict 90% of what we're going to get. And the Lightfall story really fell flat in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people also share that opinion. It didn't really progress the narrative, the story that much. When Lightfall came out, I think we were all expecting just a little bit more than what we got. The story was average at best, and it really left us with more questions than answers by the time we were done with the campaign. Rohan and Nimbus, although they both look really cool and they were a completely new ally race, they really left a lot to be desired. If you liked Rohan and Nimbus, that's totally fine. I just really didn't care about them at all, personally. And the Neomuna destination on my initial impressions was really cool. It was a totally new environment and the types of environments that we usually get in Destiny expansions. But a lot of that was taken away once I started to pay attention to how empty the whole place actually was. It was marketed as this city with Cloud Striders, so I expected there to be some hubs where the NPC Cloud Striders might be hanging out or maybe even fighting other enemies. But the whole civilization's consciousness was uploaded to the Cloud Arc, so no NPCs other than Nimbus on the entire planet. Neomuna is completely empty and lifeless in my opinion, and I notice it more and more every time I visit there. Going back to the Lightfall story, it was frustrating to play through the campaign going, okay, well now we're gonna find something out. Like when we got to the Veil, I really thought we were gonna get some actual answers, but the more I played it, the more I realized we're really not going to get anything out of this. Some of our questions did get answered in this season, Season of the Deep, with that, especially with that cutscene with the Witness, but as just about everyone has been saying, this should have been in the Lightfall story. When we all completed the campaign back in February, we had way more questions than answers. I think with how late we are into the Light and Darkness saga, Bungie just can't be giving us these cryptic storylines anymore. Now's the time to really be diving into the meat of what's actually happening, and we need to start closing down storylines instead of getting more questions. I'm really hoping that the final shape buttons up each main storyline, and I do think it will. I do also agree that it's necessary to have some form of obscurity in storytelling. That way it keeps the community theorizing. I think that's all part of it, and that's totally fine. But yeah, Lightfall story stuff, frustrating. But thankfully, like I said, we had some things answered for us in the seasonal quest lines. I actually think that this seasonal storyline was really good. I will say that this season going into next season, I'm very curious and excited to see what happens, especially with that ending. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm pretty excited. Bungie has had a good track record, usually with the final season of an expansion being pretty good. I know Season of the Splicer and Season of the Lost were some of my favorite seasons. That was going into the Witch Queen. And then obviously we had Season of the Seraph, which was one of the best seasons of the year, going into Lightfall. So I do think hopefully the next couple seasons should be strong in terms of story and overall gameplay to keep us engaged until the final shape. So like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say everything is bad in terms of the narrative that we've been getting over the seasonal quest lines, but when the main once a year campaign falls flat, I do think that's a problem. I don't think the issue is entirely just with the narrative. Obviously there are a lot of other things going on as well. I'm just tired of the cookie cutter seasonal flow that we've been getting for the last last 3 to 4 years or so. It's had almost zero innovation, and we were getting tired of the seasonal model going into the Witch Queen, and that was like a year and a half ago. I did think that the seasonal drip-fed model initially seemed like a good idea because Destiny 1 especially went with these long periods of time where we would just get no new content. So that being a big complaint of the Destiny community, I think a lot of people really did like the drip-fed content initially. The problem is, like I said, this same formula has been going on for years now, and nothing has changed. We're just ready for something new. We can always expect to get a battle pass that gives us some items. We get a subpar or mid-level, very niche exotic that we just toss in our vaults at the end of the season. I will say we do get some pretty awesome armor sets in the battle pass, but that's about it. We then get our artifact, which, sure, great change, having the ability to unlock passive perks instead of having to equip them in our mods and just waste a slot. That was a great change. The problem with the artifact, in my opinion, or one of them at least, is that some of the subclasses just get completely underused if they're not featured in the artifact. So stasis, for example, when was the last time you had a really good stasis build that synergized with the artifact? It's been a long time. I never equip stasis unless it's a very specific like Grandmaster build where I want to bring in a stasis turret warlock. But the other classes, I really just don't use it that much. And that's not to say that there are not great builds out there. It's just they're usually not as good as like Arc or Strand, which seem to be very powerful this season especially. Moving on to more of how the seasonal story works, I think it's been another big complaint in that we get 10 to 15, maybe 10 to 20 minutes per week of story-based content, which over half of that is usually just doing the seasonal activity that we've already been doing. I know the first 3 weeks, they'll usually release like a new version of the seasonal activity to kind of change things up a little bit, but then we get a small cutscene at the end and a radio message in the helm, something like that. And we know exactly what to expect every time. It's nothing new, and it's been going on, like I said, just for years now. Just being realistic, I don't expect Bungie to release a full-fledged campaign every single season because it's just not going to happen. But I think just a little bit more than 10 to 15 minutes a week would be a welcome change. I do know also that seasonal stuff isn't only narrative and story driven, it's got to have other stuff too, which we do get, like we get deep dives and salvage, that sort of thing. That kind of helps fill in those gaps where there's a lack of story. But even the seasonal game modes are predictable in terms of we know exactly what we're going to get, probably a 3 to 6 man activity. We'll get 5 to 6 new weapons to grind patterns for, we'll craft them and then call it a day. And that kind of transitions into the helm area too, where again, it's just more of the same old, same old. You have your weapons that you go grind, maybe collect some armor, and then that's it. It's not a lot of hard work, it's just grind, and usually it's all tied behind waiting until you can get your next red border on Tuesday or something like that. And really this also extends to all of the vendors right now. We get 1 new weapon per season, and I feel like it's really rare where you actually want to grind for the new vendor weapon that's out. When was the last time you tried to get a god roll of any of these weapons? I remember in Destiny 1, we would get these huge vendor refreshes every year where all new weapons, new armor, new traits, all that stuff would come out. And it was a lot of fun to try to grind all of that stuff again because you knew you had so much new stuff in the game. And no, I'm not one of those people that thinks Destiny 1 was just perfect in every way because it had a lot of flaws. And I think Destiny 2 does a lot better than Destiny 1 did. And I don't think a lot of people remember everything about the game because there was a lot wrong with it. I can see the final shape, or maybe that expansion coming after the final shape, bring some sort of massive refresh to, of course, the vendors. We're going to get a massive reset for everything, but I can see tons of new items coming in and maybe a whole new system entirely. The Vendor 3.0 system is okay, but I think we're ready for Vendor 4.0 and maybe make it just a little bit more expansive. And arguably, the largest thing affecting Destiny right now is the server stability. Yeah, I know this is absolutely beating a dead horse. Every single content creator talks about this, but I'm going to talk about it as well. Datto made a really good video. I'll go ahead and link it here. You should go watch it. It's just basically talking about how most people don't really know how server stability works. I'm definitely one of those people too. I've been guilty of saying, Bungo, fix your spaghetti code. Like, I get it. It's frustrating. I also don't really have a solution to this, but I think we also can't avoid the fact that it is a big problem in the game right now. If the majority of the community can't log into the game more than like 4 to 5% of the week, That's a significant amount of time, and it's enough for most people to completely just walk away for a little bit. I know for me, I couldn't even film my Xur video last week because I just kept getting Weasel error coded. And so that caused me to just go and play Elden Ring for the weekend because I didn't want to deal with the bad server quality and just continuously getting kicked out of every activity I was running. So just to recap for the servers, yes, they're an issue. No, I don't have the answers, but hopefully we can fix it. I will say I know that Lightfall was supposed to fix a lot of the issues that were happening in the Witch Queen expansion. But what happened, I need to read the TWID again or whatever. A couple weeks ago, they talked about how those changes actually were implemented incorrectly and it caused more instability than good. So hopefully we can see those fixed in season 22 or 23. But I'm sure many of you saw the mega viral microtransaction hell video by Aztecross. I'll go ahead and link it again. Very good video. You should watch it. I do agree with him on many points that he made. I think one of the most frustrating things that I deal with as mainly a new player focused, hey, here's how you play the game style channel, is recommending to people how they're supposed to buy the game. You think it would be simple, but I was even having a hard time doing the math and figuring out the best methods in my new player guide that I just came out with. It was a lot. There are so many bundles that I can imagine it just being a complete nightmare for a newer player if it's even a little bit confusing for me. I think the seasonal price raise to 1200 silver was also kind of a low blow as well. Basically, seasons used to be 1000 silver. You used to just be able to buy the 1000 silver pack, buy the season for 10 bucks, but now you have to buy the 1500 silver pack for $15. So the season actually is $15 unless you just had extra silver laying around. I also think the dungeon keys are way too expensive at $20 or 2000 silver if you don't have the deluxe edition. Most retail games are 60 bucks, so spending a third of that on just one activity, in my opinion, that's just too much. I will say, as a Destiny 2 just mega grinder, it's my main game, I've spent 770 hours in Destiny 2 just in Lightfall alone, and I feel like I've gotten my money's worth. But as a new player, trying to recommend someone to spend hundreds of dollars to get all the content or just to wait for a sale, which might not happen for, I don't know, 4 weeks, 8 weeks until they can actually play with you. Maybe they've lost interest to play at all at that point. My solution to this would be to get rid of all the different bundles and just make one bundle. Just make the Legacy Collection pack, which would be maybe $49.99. You get all previous content other than Lightfall, and then maybe make whatever the newest expansion is. So Lightfall right now, sure, make it $49. Everyone can get in for $100. Yeah, it's steep, but you're going to spend a lot of time in this game. And of course, I think you should be able to buy different expansions separately. If you're just missing one, you shouldn't have to buy the entire Legacy Collection. But there are a lot of different bundles right now, and it's just very confusing. And I've mentioned this in a lot of my other videos, but I am not a PvP player by any means. I'm not a PvP main. But the amount of shenanigans that happens consistently in PvP, really with Lightfall, is just astounding. GernaderJake posted a clip. I know I'm taking a lot of stuff from other content creators now, but GernaderJake, very well-respected person in the community, great PvP player. He posted a video that I pretty much think sums up exactly what the community is thinking right now.
The least they could do for a community of people that have supported their gaming company for 9 years now would be to have one person whose job it is to monitor this shit. 200 plus games that these guys have done this to people. 200 plus cards that they have ruined, that they have caused to be flawed. And not a single person in their community or in their company has any ability to stop it.
If your most competitive game mode, Trials of Osiris, is full of cheaters and hackers, what are you even playing the game for? It seemed like a couple of years ago, maybe when the Witch Queen launched, I can't remember exactly, but they really cracked down on cheaters, and I remember the problem seemed to subside a lot. Not fully, but there were a lot less cheaters in PvP, and it just seems like that has gone completely out the window, and they're all back now every weekend, especially in Trials, just ruining everyone's experience. And again, with PvP, I can also reiterate on the stagnant point. I think it's just hasn't really changed at all in years. We never get any new maps. I know they're frustrated. Like, we of course did get the rank system that came out last year. Great change, I like that. But if you're playing on the same maps that you've played 10,000 times, then it really still doesn't feel that fresh. I don't know how much of the player base plays PvP, but I do know, just looking at like YouTube channels, there are PvP only channels that are huge, and they have over 100,000, 200, 300,000 subscribers, and they only do PvP. So obviously there's a lot of interest for Destiny 2 PvP. I would assume that there is a lot of players in game playing as well. So I don't know why we just don't get any new maps or any new content in. It just doesn't make any sense. I know for me personally, one thing that keeps me invested in anything PvP related is some sort of career progression system. The whole Valor system in Destiny right now is just boring because you could grind up a ton in the season. You could prestige or reset your rank 20 times, but it doesn't really mean anything because at the start of the next season, it's going back down to 0. You have to regrind everything all over again. There are some benefits to resetting your rank. Your weapons will get an extra perk on them, or they have the chance to get an extra perk in each column. I think it maxes out at 5 resets, so there's really no point in going over 5 other than getting the Ascendant Shard at the end. But Halo Infinite, although that game has so many issues, did just come out with a progression system, a career rank system, 18 months after its launch. But they do look really cool, and something like this within Destiny and pretty much every other PvP game would be awesome to see. That way you could carry your progress over season to season and just be able to stand out. Your rank could maybe show up on your emblem as you're loading into a game. Maybe you could get new cosmetics or even a new emblem as you level up in the progression system. I just think overall, Destiny needs more career progression. We have our triumphs, I get it. Triumphs, seals, those are good career things to go for, but it's not anything that you can continuously raise up other than your triumph score. That's about it. Guardian ranks was really close. I thought Guardian ranks was going to be a number that just constantly went up, but instead, just like everything else, it just resets season over season. So you go back down to rank 6, even if you're rank 11. And what sucks about being rank 11 is that when you reach the next season, sure, it does say that you did reach rank 11 in the previous season, but there's no way to show that you have gotten rank 11 multiple times. So I think it would be cool if you could guild your Guardian ranks to show how many times you've gotten up to rank 11. At least that would be some sort of cool metric to show someone that's gilded 5 times in Guardian rank 11 versus someone that's gilded once. Maybe they could make like a little number next to it or change the color a little bit. I don't know, but we all like to just stand out in Destiny. Anything that we can do to set ourselves apart from anyone else is something that we all want. Moving on to some good stuff, the consistency at which Destiny brings us endgame content like raids and dungeons, I think is in a good spot. These activities are always very intricate. I know they take tons of time for the Bungie team to complete. We've been on this schedule of raid dungeon for a couple years now in Destiny, and I do think that this is a good schedule to be on. And I think it's a major contributing factor to what's keeping Destiny 2 afloat right now. Destiny's endgame activities are rarely bad. They're almost always awesome. So this way, I know that next season, for example, we're going to be getting a new or reprised raid, but it's still going to feel like it's new because we'll get all new weapons. It's something that we haven't had in the game before. The season after that, we're going to get a new dungeon. Season after that, with Final Shape, we're going to get a new raid. I think without raids and dungeons, we would not have a Destiny today. I also think Destiny's gunplay is top-notch. It's another major factor that keeps us playing the game. Using abilities is satisfying, and finding that perfect weapon to use in specific situations is rewarding. Coming up with a perfect build that works for you is what makes this game infinitely more fun. There are so many combinations of classes, subclasses, aspects and fragments, and weapons to play around with that it really seems like you can always find some new way to play. There's always new build videos coming out. That's why they're so successful. It's because everyone always wants to know the strongest version of the build that they can play. So looking ahead, we've got 2.5 seasons before Final Shape. I don't expect too many things to change. I know in season 22, we're going to be getting the exotic mission rotator. I know we're also getting a bunch of exotic rebalances, that sort of thing, the usual. But then season 23, I believe, will be bringing us the in-game LFG feature that we've been waiting on for so long. In these seasons leading up to the Final Shape, we can of course expect new seasonal activities, new weapons, the other usual stuff. And hopefully it's done in a way that will keep us all engaged until the Final Shape. And speaking of that, the Final Shape reveal trailer, it's usually like 30 minutes to an hour long. It gives us tons of insight on what's coming. That is a major hype time for Destiny. And expect a video on that, of course. I'll do a whole breakdown. Hopefully it's a little bit better than my Lightfall preview video. That was like my 3rd video ever, so I think it'll be a little bit better. Looking past the Final Shape, we have this image that's been circulating around a lot lately. It kind of shows that we have another big expansion coming shortly after the Final Shape, which makes sense because Why would we have the final shape? We maybe kill the witness. I don't know, but the story is going to come to a point. They said it's like a major turning point in the story with the final shape. So what are we supposed to do for an entire year after that? I really think that with the Light and Darkness saga coming to a close, we can expect final shape maybe 3 months later, then another expansion size piece of content coming out after that to help take us through the next 10 years. That's kind of going to start us off. Either way, I'm sure we'll find out on August 23rd. It would be really cool if they kind of gave us another preview. Like a few years ago, they gave us a preview of the next 3 or 4 expansions before Beyond Light even came out. It would be cool to see like the next 4 or 5 expansions, whatever their plans are until like 2028. If you want to see more detail on whatever this image is here, I'm going to link a video to Mactics. He does a really good breakdown of it, as well as his opinions on Destiny and the state of the game. It came out a couple weeks back, but either way, let him know Kotha sent you over. Well, I hope I was able to process my thoughts clearly here. I know this isn't my normal form of content. It's usually just the normal guides, but if you agree with me or disagree with me, please let me know down in the comments. I love talking about this stuff, and I love hearing where you all are at with the game. Not too much content to make in Destiny right now. I never want to just make a video to make content. I don't want to like bury your sub feed with things that you don't want to watch. But the good news is my streaming setup is like 99% complete. Obviously you can see this camera is new. I'm waiting on my internet to get hardwired into my PC because the Wi-Fi is just not stable enough to support a stream. I did some test streams, private, like unlisted streams, and they were chopping out like every 30 minutes. So I don't want you all to experience that. But of course, on the stream, we're going to be doing the usual raids, dungeons, the normal stuff that I like to take people through, hopefully take some viewers through it as well if we can get enough people to watch. But I also want to branch out a little bit and try some other games as well. So I am really big on Starfield. That's coming out really soon. Obviously Elden Ring, like I said. If you want to see me suffer through the Dark Souls trilogy, I would definitely be willing to 100% all of those games for you on stream. So let me know. I'm up for the challenge. But either way, I hope to see you on the stream when I start streaming, hopefully in the next week or 2. Well, that is it for this one. I will see you all in the Discord or in the next video or live stream.